Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo, and today's episode, I'm going to start off with a pretty interesting story about the Greyhound bus lines. So the Greyhound bus lines is continuing its partnership with the National Runaway Safe Line to reunite families by giving endangered children a free bus ticket home. So it's called the Home Free program, which was established in 1955, that basically helps runaway, homeless, and exploited youth return home safely or get to a safe and stable place to stay where they can receive appropriate services. So to be eligible for this program, you have to be between 12 and 21 years old, and you must identify as being homeless, runaway, or a victim of human trafficking, and must be willing to be reunited with your family. So in some cases, the parents, guardians, or another adult family member that's designated by the parent or guardian may also receive a round-trip ticket to the youth location so they can accompany the youth home. So this all must be initiated actually by the youth by calling the NRS hotline, and then they will be screened for signs of human trafficking. So the NRS will help the youth find a safe and local place, such as like a police station or a homeless shelter. And this program has approximately already helped about 400 youth use the program each year. So I didn't know there was like such thing as a program like that, but that's pretty cool that Greyhound partners with National Runaway Safe Line. My next story is about an everyday hero. His name is Marion Simpson from Albany, Texas. He's a regular visitor to folks hospitalized or placed in nursing homes, and he has now been rewarded as an everyday hero. So this is an award given by the Reporter News to people who make a difference in their communities, often without receiving recognition. So he is in his 80s. He suffered a broken leg back in February. So rehabilitation from that and a heart surgery slowed him down. But every time he was healed, he was back to visiting people in the nursing homes, and he just kept going back. His sister-in-law nominated him as an everyday hero, which this is an award he says he doesn't feel like he deserves the title. He says, "I don't feel like I'm a hero, just another laborer trying to do what's right." But his sister-in-law disagrees. She says he does it to the extreme. If anybody could get up and get dressed and do that all the time, there's got to be something else there. So he actually spent 4 years in the Air Force and retired from Littick Hooks Roofing, where he worked for 38 years. And he spent all of that time visiting people in the church and hospitals while also raising 4 kids. But he says that he has another hero living in his home, which is his wife, Glenda, who he actually met in the Air Force. He says that she's taken care of me for 62 years, and she's truly the hero. So his recent health issues have placed some restrictions on his actions. It can be a long walk from a parking lot to the hospital room, so sometimes he has to wait until a person returns home. But if it's doable, people have learned that they can count on him to be there for him. So he'll go and visit strangers, families, and friends, spends all of his time just spending time with people that need it. So yeah, he was hailed as an everyday hero. Now, my next story is about color blindness. So there's a pair of glasses that basically can color the darkest places for people who are colorblind. So colorblindness affects every 12 males and 1 in every 200 females. So the reaction from an 11-year-old named Tate, that when he put on the glasses and kind of saw the world for the first time with color, this video went viral. He says it changed, just everything looks so different. And he's just happy that he gets to see what everybody else sees. So this all happened thanks to 7th grade Jonathan Jones and his mom Carol. So in November, Jonathan got the chance to try on glasses as a part of his science class. The video of his reaction also went completely viral, and people were sending him DMs to send him money to help Jonathan get these glasses. So Carol set up a GoFundMe page, but not to pay for Jonathan's glasses, but money to buy a pair for another child. So for the GoFundMe page, she asked for $350, which would pay for the glasses. And before they went to bed that night, they were already at $1,000 that they had raised. The donations have now reached $32,000, which is nearly 100 times more than what they asked for. So the company that makes these glasses, and Chroma, heard about the GoFundMe page and everything that was going on, and they committed to match the donation, which could provide 130 pairs of glasses. So on a cold morning before Christmas in Cottonwood, Minnesota, a small group of kids gathered in the gym at Lakeview School to get their glasses so they could see color for the first time. The Jones family plans to keep their donations in state, but eventually want to help colorblind kids around the country. So I thought that was pretty cool. I can't even imagine putting on a pair of glasses and seeing the entire world, just like so different. So I don't know if you've heard about the 2020 trend. It's like the 2020 tip challenge that's going around right now. Basically, you tip $2,020, and it's the 2020 tip challenge. So a server at an Illinois IHOP is starting off 2020 with a very generous tip thanks to Donnie Wahlberg. So he tipped $2,020 to his server on a $78 bill. And his wife, Jenny McCarthy, tweeted a picture of the receipt with the hashtag 2020 tip challenge. And then it's just kind of completely gone viral, but this is not just the first instant. There was a generous tip to start the new year, just days before. Raining in 2020 in Michigan, a waitress named Danielle received a $2,020 tip from a customer. Danielle is a single mother who was finally able to ring in the new year with one less worry after she received this generous tip from 2 customers who frequent the Michigan restaurant where she works. The tab was only $23, and she got a $2,020 tip on that. So Danielle is currently trying to regain custody of her 3 children after overcoming an opioid addiction and 2 years of sobriety. At one point, she was living at a homeless shelter, and she moved from Detroit to Albany with absolutely nothing but clothes on her back. The unexpected windfall has now helped her as she's moved into her new home on New Year's Eve. She said, "It's just such a blessing. I'm trying to bring my kids home. I'm trying to do right." She said that she'll use the money to obtain a driver's license as well, which is a privilege she hasn't held for 10 years that will allow her to see more of her children and soon teach her teenage daughter how to drive. But yeah, the $20 tip challenge continues, so watch out for that. My next story is about a match made in heaven. This couple is the absolute perfect match. So after 50 years of marriage, a man has given his wife his kidney. So Mike donated his kidney to his wife Peggy after hers began to fail from a kidney disease. The genetic condition causes cysts that she had to develop in her kidneys, often leading to kidney failure when the organ becomes too enlarged. So Peggy said, "It was quite a gift. I don't think he has to give me another gift for the rest of my life. This was the ultimate present." So she lost her own mother to the same disease, and her brother has also reached stage 3 kidney failure. So hers is only functioning at 14%, and she basically had 2 options, which was dialysis or get a transplant. And for those lucky enough to get on a national transplant list, it usually takes about 7 years before finding a match. And especially if you're an older person, that's only if you can find a hospital willing to perform the surgery on someone over 70 years old. And she is 74. So they didn't think that it would be a possibility that he would be a perfect match. But yeah, they are both 74 years old. If you carry babies from your husband, your blood has been mixed, and very often you develop antigens against that blood because of bearing children. So they basically just had no idea if it was going to be a possibility. But when Mike checked out on both blood type and the 6 antigen tissue match, it was an actual miracle. So as it turned out, Mike was literally the perfect match for her. And he had been there all along. He said he didn't even have to think twice about his decision, of course. They are high school sweethearts, and they are just really the perfect match. Mike says, "I think I'm really committed now. We promised each other in sickness and in health until death do us part, and that's how it's going to be. We're just trying to extend that death do us part for as long as we can." Definitely a perfect match. It is time for a little bit of a break, but when we get back, I have a story that brought 2 young little patients together from their love of Lego. And it's a pretty cute one, so don't go anywhere.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast. So the love of Lego has brought a hospital janitor and 2 boys in isolation a bond that is everlasting. So 2 young patients who are undergoing treatment in isolation, they have bonded because they both love Lego. And they wouldn't have known that they both love Lego and built this friendship if it wasn't for the janitor that helped them form their long-lasting friendship. So KJ Upshaw is responsible for regularly changing the liners in all 82 of the patient rooms in the bone marrow transplant unit. 7-year-old patient Cohen was always playing with Lego, and that's when KJ noticed that also another boy was always playing with Lego. His name is Keegan. If he had spare time, he was building structures out of Lego and blocks. So KJ thought that these boys were destined to be friends. They started sharing what they were both building, and KJ would kind of go back and forth and show them what each of them were building. And Cohen's mom, Carrie, told the hospital it was kind of like a daily report on what the other child was building. And so he kind of enjoyed getting to hear about what someone else had in common while he was still there. And just talking to KJ, because our world is pretty small right now. We were in that room and Cohen was in isolation. He couldn't leave, and it was just a bright spot in the day when KJ would come in and just sit there and chat with Cohen for a second, sharing what Keegan was doing with his Lego. So the friendship helped both of these youngsters recover until they could meet in person. The day that Keegan was well enough to go home from the hospital, Cohen was healthy enough to wear a mask and walk across the hall to Keegan's door so he could give him a Lego set as a farewell gift. The boys' mothers are already arranging a Lego playdate for the boys once Cohen is out of the hospital. And it's all thanks to KJ, the janitor at the hospital. When a team of Indiana firefighters were called away from their grocery shopping on an emergency dispatch call, they were incredibly heartened by what they found when they had returned. So Station 392 crew from the Fishers Fire Department were shopping at the grocery store when they were suddenly forced to leave their groceries behind to respond to a call. So the store's employees stashed their groceries in the coolers until they could return, and then an anonymous customer paid for the firefighters' shopping. According to the department's Lieutenant Duane, he and 2 other firefighters had been stocking up on dinner and lunch supplies for them and their families when they left on the call. This is the first time in 20 years that a community member had ever paid for his supermarket bill as a thank you. The department later described the good deed in a Facebook post, which said, when they returned to the store, the Austin staff had placed their groceries in the cooler to keep until their return, and some anonymous kind person had paid for them. The crew hopes that person sees this post and understands how much their kindness is appreciated. I think it's so awesome when people go out of their way to show thanks to the people that serve us and that help us and keep us safe. So this next story is pretty interesting. So some McDonald's employees saved a woman from domestic abuse after she secretly seeked their help. So these McDonald's employees are being hailed as heroes as they saved this woman from a terrible situation. So they secretly acknowledged that a female customer's plea for help, and their quick actions helped to rescue her from the domestic abuser. The woman had originally approached the service counter of the restaurant in Lodi, California by herself so she could pretend like she was placing an order. She then told the staffers to call the police because she was in danger of being harmed by her male travel companion. Additionally, she gave him her license plate number and asked them to keep her hidden until the law enforcement arrived. The woman went to the bathroom as the employees called the police department and explained the situation. When the woman returned to the counter to place an order, however, the man in question walked into the store and demanded that she use the drive-thru. Police officers later reported that the man, Eduardo Venezuela, had physically abused the woman in the past. And on that particular day, he had threatened her with a stolen firearm and demanded that she take him to see his family. So after the woman was coaxed to go through the drive-thru, she continued mouthing the words, "Help me," to the employees. Luckily, law enforcement officers arrived on the scene just shortly after the call was placed, and he was actually arrested and charged with criminal threats, stolen property, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. So the McDonald's is just one of 20,000 restaurants, businesses, libraries, and community spaces across the United States that have been certified by the Safe Place program, which is an organization dedicated to training U.S. workforces so they can offer safety and emergency services to people in need. So for my next story, there is a new homeless shelter in Seattle, which is the first facility of its kind that has been designated by Native Americans for Native Americans, and it has already helped to take in dozens of people from the streets. So despite how Native Americans can only make up about 1% of the U.S. population, they make up 10% of the country's homelessness. Furthermore, there are more than 1,000 Native Alaskans, American Indians, and Pacific Islanders living in Seattle alone. So that's why Chief Seattle Club, which is a nonprofit dedicated to ending Native homelessness, launched the Eagle Village settlement in the Soto neighborhood of Seattle. This was back in November. So the village is made up of several dozen trailers that can comfortably house 2 people at a time. Collectively, the village can house up to 31 people who may need access to resources or stable living conditions until they can find arrangement for more permanent housing. So the village also boasts a medicine garden, traditional healing circles, and an on-site case management and resources. The managers of the $3.3 million village now hope that their trailblazing new initiative will inspire other cities to tackle the disproportionate amount of Native homelessness people in America. I did not know that Native Americans only make up 1% of the U.S. population, but 10% of the country's homeless. That is crazy. But it looks like this groundbreaking new homeless shelter is really going to make a difference. Field Training Officer Kenneth Martin of the Fort Smith Police Department has been awarded Employee of the Month for his sensitive response to an attempted theft. So camera footage showed 2 adults trying to steal food items from Walmart, and it was in front of 2 children as well. So officers were talking to the couple with the children when Officer Kenneth Martin went up to the till, asked them to ring it through again, and he will pay for it. So he paid for their groceries that they were going to be stealing, or they tried to steal, and the other officers had to detain the man, but the woman was allowed to leave with the children. And Kenneth Martin said, "I took care of these for you. Okay. If you need help, ask for help. Don't do this, and not with these babies. I understand this is food and things that you need, but just ask for some help. Don't do this with these babies. Y'all go and have a better holiday." Which is such a sweet thing to do, to pay for their groceries. Fort Smith City Director Neil Martin released a testimony from a fellow officer who witnessed the kind act and then nominated Kenneth Martin for the Employee of the Month award, just from his kind gesture of doing that. It is time for another break, but don't go anywhere, because when we get back, I have some more amazing stories to share with you.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Hopping on the health train, my next story is about an FDA-approved ovarian cancer drug, which is a new maintenance treatment for advanced pancreatic cancer. So the drug is called Lynparza, and it was developed by pharmaceutical companies as a maintenance treatment for patients with a specific gene mutation whose cancer spread beyond the pancreas and whose disease did not progress after 16 weeks of chemotherapy. Patients will now be selected for therapy based on the FDA-approved companion diagnostic for Lynparza. So pancreatic cancer is a deadly cancer with a high unmet medical need. It is the 12th most commonly occurring cancer and the 7th leading cause of cancer death globally. So the disease has the lowest survival rate of the most cancers and is the only major cancer with a single-digit 5-year survival rate, which is 2 to 9% in nearly every single country. As there are often no symptoms, or symptoms may be non-specific in the early stages, it is commonly diagnosed at an incurable stage. So around 80% of pancreatic cancer patients are not diagnosed until it is very late, and the average survival rate is less than a year. Executive Vice President of the Oncology Business Unit, Dave Fredrickson, said patients with advanced pancreatic cancer historically have faced poor outcomes due to the aggressive nature of the disease and limited treatment advances over the last few decades. Lynparza is now the only approved targeted medicine in biomarker-selected patients with advanced pancreatic cancer. So despite advances in treatment, few improvements have been made in diagnosis and treatment over the decades. Current treatment is surgery for approximately only 10 to 20% of patients who are eligible, chemotherapy and radiotherapy, highlighting critical unmet medical need for more effective treatment options. But now, with Lynparza, it's currently approved in several dozen countries for the maintenance treatment of various forms of ovarian and breast cancer, and has been used in over 25,000 patients worldwide now. So Lynparza has also the broadest and most advanced clinical trial development program of any PARP inhibitor drug. This sounds like it can make a huge difference for a lot of people. So an Uber driver received an amazing gift from a passenger. The passenger went out of his way to make sure that she could finish her college degree by paying off her debt. So 43-year-old single mother from Atlanta, Georgia. Her name is Latonia Young. She's a hairdresser by day and an Uber driver by night. She's been studying criminal justice at Georgia State University until basically she was barred from continuing her classes due to an unpaid $700 balance on her account. So one night she was driving around some passengers, and one in particular has now kind of changed her life. She started talking about her debt just in casual conversation. It came up and said that every time she goes to pay it, her kids end up needing something, so she just pushes it aside. A few days later, she received a call from the university that she was free to re-enroll in more classes since her Uber passenger, Kevin Esch, paid off her remaining balance. She was absolutely astonished by this kind gesture. She worked her butt off to make sure that she had all A's and B's to ensure that she would graduate with flying colors, and so he would know how much he was appreciated for what he did for her. Kevin was actually in the audience when she graduated with her associate's degree a few weeks ago, and he is still inspiring her to push hard through everything as she prepares to study for her bachelor's degree. Talk about just going through your regular, work night, driving people home from the bar or something, and it just changing your life. One passenger completely making a huge difference. A professor's nonprofit pays it forward by using therapy and literature to assist women in need. So Michelle Lane feels like she does her best work one-on-one with her therapy. So she is a professor at Christopher Newport University, but she also maintains a small private practice as a licensed clinical therapist. So just about 2 years ago, she was inspired by the stories emerging from the Me Too movement, and she wanted to create a nonprofit that would make a difference in her area. She's 37 years old, and she knew that she wouldn't have a lot of resources, so she mostly started out by specializing in small gestures of support to women in need, but also helping with larger and more specific issues, such as like financial aid and custody battles. So she launched what she calls Pay It For Her. She accepts donations to her Small Kindness Fund and to her emergency fund. As a single mother, she keeps her therapy practice on a small scale, and she operates Pay It For Her out of her home office with only one intern as support at this point, but she would like to continue to grow and make it bigger and bigger. So she says she continues to learn lessons through her own work that she's able to pass on to those who are seeking assistance. So before Pay It For Her, she knew nothing about starting a nonprofit, but she knew that she just really wanted to do this. She actually got some help from Virginia Beach-based volunteer Hampton Roads, which is local web experts, helped her design her website for it and promote it through social media. So she's doing her own practice with her mental health tips and helping out women that are in need, both large and small problems. And she says, even though our primary focus is the idea of support and small kindness, small ripples can grow to be pretty significant. We want to help people in many different ways and really make a difference in the community. And for my last story, it's for all of you animal lovers out there. Illinois has joined California and Nevada in banning animal-tested cosmetic products. So the ban was signed into law in August and then took effect at the start of the year. So supporters of the ban say that it could save thousands of animals' lives each year. However, the ban is not retroactive and only applies to products or ingredients where animal testing was done prior to January 1st. So violators of the ban could be fined $5,000 for the first day they're discovered and another $1,000 for every additional day. The law provides exhortations for when non-animal testing is not available and animal testing is needed in connection with a human health problem. The Humane Society of the United States estimates that more than 500,000 animals die worldwide as a result of testing for cosmetic problems. So there you go. Illinois has joined California and Nevada in banning animal-tested cosmetic products. That is all the stories that I have for you today. But as always, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alyssa Jo. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, like and follow us on social media, and leave a 5-star review. I look forward to next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast.